Well, I got some wood and I've got a boat with no floor in it. I'll take a minute and pull out these temporary seats. They just got some 1/4-inch bolts holding them in. Start doing some calculating. So for the, we'll call it the joist or support system underneath the plywood, I'm just using a 1/2-inch sheeting. This is about, from where the floor is going to hit with a 3-inch height. It's about 61 inches across. So I think I'll space these 20 inches inside diameter, and that'll give me, give or take 21.5 outside later. So for now I'm going to cut a couple of 20-inch pieces so I can stabilize this a bit and get a bit of a better idea. Going to build a deck all the way to the front and then drop it down whatever that is, 5 or 6 or 7 inches. Have a bit of a lower deck back here for me, the driver. I did mark these two long pieces every 4 inches just with pencil marks, because when I go to figure out how to cut the plywood, I'm basically going to need to take a measurement from one side, to the other, and I figure if I do that every 4 inches, because of the contour of the boat and the width, the angle, etc., I think that might be the easiest way to go about this. Kind of start to get an idea of how to cut up it'll be the first 4-foot sheet, and then trim out for all these ribs, and hopefully it'll drop right in place. I found center on the boat, drilled through the aluminum and ran a screw through the wood into the aluminum to hold that in check. And then up here I found center as best I could, because these aren't made absolutely perfect, and then screwed a block into the cross member and ran a wood screw through the back. Looks like about 9 3/4. Yeah, it looks about 9 3/4 on each side. Call that a 30.5-inch throat. And I know the distance from outside to outside is right around 21 7/16. I kind of just drew out, I don't know how well that shows up, but a bit of a blueprint or a template of what I'm going to cut the 4-foot wide sheet of plywood down to. I'll just show you the method to my madness. I've got 10 lines here, which correspond with the 4-inch marks on the supports, and I'm just going to measure from here to here on each side, and then I can take into account that 21 7/16 inches. I should be able to get a pretty good replication of this hull. Probably the easiest is to have the level across, and I'll measure from this point back to the outside. That looks like 19 call it 19 3/4. And I just go to the next one, bring the level until it touches the edge of the boat. Call that one 19 11/16. And where the marks sort of line up with the ribs, I'm just going to the front side of the rib. It'll get close, it'll get me close enough. That one's 19 1/8. This one looks like it's 18 7/8. So I'll finish up measuring for each of these marks up to the 4-foot point, then I'll bring it back when I lay it out over the plywood. So I've done all the layout from my little diagram. I'm gonna err on the side of a little wider, because I can always trim it down. Okay, now it's it's test time. See if it fits. Well, here goes nothing. So far it fits. A little over 9 centimeters. Just kind of checking the squareness to that subframe. Well, so far it doesn't look terrible. Rather than trying to get too fancy and trim, you know, up and over and around, I just thought I'd cut some of similar U's or whatever out of it. So I made up a little template last night. As my first boss said, hurry up, you're not building a piano. It's kind of hard to visualize because of all the angles and contours, you know, this looks like it's going to be way out, but hopefully once this drops down, it's maybe a bit of a better, tighter fit. Well, I'll mark out the other side and then get the jigsaw out and carve some notches. Cut out the notches for the ribs. Just see how everything sort of drops into place. I couldn't have got that lucky, could I? Well, it's sitting flush on the supports at the front. Pretty much, you know, touching here and there. It's not going to be perfect along these lines. That fits good. It's resting on the support there, touching at the front on this side. The back fits nicely. I did look at some other sort of DIY boat builds that guys are doing, and a lot of them they sort of just cut straight around there so it sat on the ribs, but then that leaves, you know, 3/4 of an inch to an inch of gap where you can maybe drop a cell phone or lose your keys, or not to say that couldn't happen here, but I think maybe the chances are a little less. I'm going to call that one good. So I got the next piece, so I cut up the next piece. I haven't put the divots in for the ribs yet. Make sure it's all lined up. I did cut it, this one as well, a little wide, just to give me some wiggle room. The tricky part is, you know, there's optical illusions going on because it kind of looks like it won't work or whatever, but I think the trick is to do a bunch of measuring and then cut it and try it. And the worst case is might have to buy another piece of wood. Okay, I'll go trim those out, then we'll see if it fits. Let's see how we did. It doesn't look bad. So this meets up and touches. There's a bow in the middle, but I'm thinking that's just due to wood warpage. Might need to trim these back, this one and this one, just a bit. So that's tight, that's tight. Maybe I'll climb in and stand on it and just see how everything fits. Yeah, I think I'll take about a 1/4 out of that and about a 1/4 inch off that one, because with my weight in the middle I've got lips here. That one sits good. Okay, I trim those two pockets back a little bit, 1/4 inch or so. Just going to put some weight on it and see how everything fits. Well, I'm going to call that good. So to figure out where the plywood's gonna touch, I'm just running a string line, marking where it touches. Probably could have used a different color of marker. It looks like I have a black one here, so So that gives me a line of plane where the plywood's going to sit, and where I'll have to carve out a little bit. So I cut up the pieces for the upper deck. It's split almost in the middle. Basically I would have had to buy another sheet of plywood just for that piece, so I pieced together a couple of scraps. The other thing I have is this is from the old bulkhead, and it's got a bend in it, so I'm going to flatten that out, once I've figured out the framework, where everything is going to fit and come to, etc. Run little stainless steel bolts, or maybe I'll rivet it back into where it was, because the plan is for flotation is I'm going to fill up the little bulkhead. This area is going to be left open underneath. I'll put a trap door in here, one seat in the middle. I'm going to close in this side and close in under here and put flotation underneath there, and then there will be a second seat over in that area, and then my chair, the captain's chair, will go back here, and I'm going to put flotation underneath this area. So I'll have flotation under there, in the middle, and in the front. And by flotation I mean a whole bunch of pool noodles. So I'm going to get set up and run a strip of 3-inch wide plywood underneath this, glue it and screw it so it's got a little better stability. I'm using all stainless steel hardware in here, otherwise they rust and break too quickly. I'll set that in place and start doing some more calculations. So this 4-foot sheet I'm going to put in next, it's going to be a little trickier. The plywood will sort of rest along the edge up until about that point, and then you can see that the mark starts dropping off over to this 4-foot point just because of the contour of the boat. I used a long straight 2x4 with just a 1/2-inch block underneath the edge of it, and then I just kept moving it forward, making marks about every 1 inch, and then used a straight edge to sort of join the line. I've got the line, it's 4 feet this way, and I've got some of the starting measurements, so I've got it marked up to here where it sits on the edge of the boat, but then it takes off at an angle down over to here. So I've got to try to come up with a plan on how I'm going to sketch this out or design a bit of a template or something. Well, I needed 3 arms to do this. I don't know if it's going to be right, but I picked a point on each side, made a mark where the level is square with the other decking material, or the straight edge, because I'm not using it as a level, and then a point where it comes to 4 feet in corresponding with that line I drew, and then I measured off about every 6 inches from the line to the straight edge and kept plotting that on the diagram. I think I'll call it good for a day, and tomorrow I'll cut it out and we'll see how close it fits. So it's the next morning. I just finished carving up the piece for in here. How about that? Not bad. Looks like it lined up almost like it was supposed to. I don't know if you can quite see the pencil mark, but it lines up with the bottom corner of the cut. Maybe my math skills are better than I thought they were. Just check the other side here. So yeah, not much of a gap here at all. I thought I might have to trim out some of those divots, but I don't think I will. So now I'm trying to figure out the contour for this bulkhead for the underdeck compartment. I drew a series of parallel lines and then measured from the bottom to the boat hull and then just marked out each one of those measurements. So now I'll pick a line up at the top. At the very lowest point, I think it's, so say 12 5/8 inches. So I'll start from that point and make all my measurements and then try cutting a nice smooth contour so it sits on the inner part of this one rib, so it's just got a little bit of extra support. If it rubs, it'll sit on top of the rivets. Well, there's the finished product. You know, it's not perfect. I'm not sure why I ended up with a gap here. Maybe I should have taken a couple measurements closer in, but it won't make any difference. This is just going to be an area to throw in, you know, toss the anchor in, life jackets, maybe a tackle box, that sort of stuff. I just finished cutting the final piece, hopefully, for up front here. I was glad that I hung on to the old bulkhead cover, because I made a few marks here and there and centers, etc., and tried to use it as a bit of a template and then measure off to the edge. Yeah, because this one I think was the hardest one to work through. Let's see how it turned out. I guess I'm not done cutting because I have to carve out for the those ribs. Here goes. Well, it's not terrible yet. I did cut it a little bit wider just because I sort of anticipated this one was a tricky fit. The center almost lines up perfectly. Has to drop down about 3/8 of an inch. So yeah, if I take this piece out, that was sort of from the original, or one of the earlier measurements. Well, it looks like it's a fit. I ended up, you know, notching and nicking here and there. It ends up nicely in plane with the other one, centered. And the other thing I did around the front here edge was, this is 1/2 inch plywood, so down about, a 1/4 inch, I beveled it at 45 so it would sort of sit a little tighter. So I pre-drilled 7 holes, cut across support, and it's just to provide support at the back here from this 4-foot piece to the nose piece. Just going to give it a little dabble, do ya? So that provides a good backing for this nose piece. So I'll put those on the underside. So it's just to provide a little bit of stability. In fact, I may just run one up the middle, because this 1/2 inch is good on 16-inch centers. That should work well. I believe I'm going to make the hole, I think it's 20 or 21 inches wide. This will be bolted through. I got a couple of stainless steel door hinges. So the idea will be that I'm going to carve out a good size hole under the seat. It'll sit or be supported by two rails. And when I want to get in there, just flip up the seat. Or I took that piece that was previously it kind of came up with an angle that covered the old bulkhead. And I cut it down and beat it flat. So now I'm going to run some bolts and washers and whatnot. There, all 4 are tight. And when I'm ready, I can fill this up with cut up pool noodles for flotation. I ran a string level from that first cross member, just touching the second cross member. So everything's in plane that way. I'll just check the other side. This one's maybe 1/8 of an inch lower. So I'll split the difference. Okay, I think I'm gonna drill some holes through this aluminum and get probably 4 screws installed. Well, that stiffened it up nicely and holds everything in place. Next I'm going to cut the 2 cross supports and then probably get them in place. So I kind of needed 3 arms to get all that put together. So now I'm going to take the decking that goes over this, carve out the hole for the trap door or the cubby hole door. And you just finishing the final cut on this hatch lid. Let's see how it fits. Leaves a nice edge on each side. And I'll run a 2x4 across there and there. It's all going to work well. I went around the edges mostly for the underneath, painted and sealed in about that far, sealed all these edges, and I'm going to go around and do that to all the pieces, and then when I'm completely done, when everything's bolted and screwed in place, then I'll finish painting the top out. Given that I'm still going to be walking on this and dropping things, I don't want to wait for the paint to dry. And you might also wonder why I didn't go with a nice good one side finished wood. 2 reasons. 1, price, and 2, I think the sort of mottled surface will help with a little bit of traction. I pre-drilled the 3 holes for carriage bolts. It's 2 feet, so one at 6 and 18. Good and secure. That hatch will sit in there nicely, and then to help secure it, fairly simple affair, I'm just going to screw down one of these on each side. They can slip back, lock out of place, or lock into place. Canadian Tire had 21 of them, so I bought them. So we're just out here fishing, and I'm noticing that there's some sweating along the back edge. So I think I might clean that up and mix up some epoxy and just coat that center section where it looks to be coming in. So there was a little bit of weeping along the back last year, like I showed. So I mixed up some JB weld and just pushed it into the seam along the back here. Not exactly sure if that's where it was leaking from. Can't hurt, might help. So here's sort of the beginning of the pool noodle idea. I used up, I bought 21 of them because that's all that they had. I think I'll probably need another 20 or so. I want to pack this area full. The hull weighs, I would estimate, the hull alone was probably 200 pounds. I could move it around quite easily. The motor is, I think, 165 pounds. Say all in with seats and everything, 500 pounds. I did some rough calculations from the internet of what these will support for weight. And yeah, I think 40 noodles, 40 noodles plus all the wood that's in it. If it gets that bad that I'm worried about it sinking or not, I've got bigger problems. I'll carry on with putting these in. And then I'll bolt down this section, finish stuffing the noodles in from underneath, and screw down and batten up the floor. Oops, forgot the camera. So I marked out, this is for the back one, trimmed these at 45, sanded everything, and now I'm just drilling through for the carriage bolts. Yep. Good, only one more to go. Now what I need to do is kind of climb underneath and use a felt pen to mark the spots where I'm going to run the bolts through from the top. I'll save you that, the pain of watching that. I'll bring you back once I start tightening this down. Well, the middle deck is set in place. If those front bolts would have been 3/16 of an inch farther, I wouldn't have been able to reach underneath to get to them. There's one, two, and the third one's done. Now I'm just going to put some support in for between these two deck pieces. So that 2x3 is about 2.5 wide, so 2 inches, so 3.25. Perfect. It's about lunchtime, but I thought I'd slap some paint on the top of these pedestal bases. It'll dry over lunch, or dry enough. Then I can bolt the seats down. This is Seco floor paint, interior, exterior. Seems to dry fairly quickly. I'll do the other two and then bring you back when I bolt the seats down. So I'm just finishing up bolting on the swivel and the pedestal. Set it in place. Careful not to knock any of the carriage bolts through to the bottom. One more. Yeah, good and solid. Okay, I'll do that 2 more times on the front ones and then see what's next. Okay, well, all 3 seats are bolted down and snugged in tight. Got a few little tweaks to do. Got to come up with something for around the gunwale. Thinking some wood, not sure yet. And a little bit of tuning to do on the motor. So I finally picked up some more pool noodles. And now I'm just going to start cutting them up and stuffing them underneath here. Looks like they're pretty much being cut in half, so 28 1/4. I'll keep cutting them until I run out. Well, it's pretty much stuffed full of pool noodles under that center section. And under this rear deck is full. And then I'm going to put some flotation up under the little triangular nose cone. I'll do the same on the other side and punch in the bottom. Okay, now go do some work on those hinges up on the front seat. I didn't like the way that these grabbed the little bit of the 2x4 because it's 1.5 inches wide, or didn't grab it enough. So I took another set of hinges, cut them down, re-drilled holes, so it should catch that 2x4 nicely. I think I'll slap a little paint down there first and then I'll screw those into place. I dabbed some paint on there, and while it's drying I think I'll go to the back and I want to screw down that back platform around the edges a little bit. Just want to tie this panel down in a couple of places. Well, that should work. And those are done. Now I'll place these two hinges. Well, that should work just fine. Ended up with a pretty good sized storage well. I'm going to hit it with some more gray paint, get the floor all covered in. I won't bore you with watching me do all the brush strokes, but I'll bring you back for the finished product. Well, got the floor all painted. I got the hatch propped open so it doesn't glue itself closed while the paint cures. You know, it didn't turn out too bad. It is what it is. I think it'll be a great little fishing boat. Lots of room for all those big fish we're going to catch. So I think that's about it for this video. I'm going to do a couple other things, like probably bolt in some cup holders and rod holders and that sort of stuff, but I think that about wraps this one up. So thanks for hanging out, and we'll maybe see you on the next one. Have a great day. Bye for now.